Hey, tribe. We're back at it again. It's Monday, and we never miss a Monday. Glad to have you guys on our show. And welcome to a very special Father's Day episode where we explore the impact of men's mental health and physical health on families and communities. Today, we're going to break the silence surrounding men's mental health and uncover its effects on the family dynamics as well as community well being. Now, we got to bring the gods to the stage, so join us as we discuss some strategies for promoting well being. And again, happy Father's Day out there to all the incredible fathers. Let's get to it. Let's bring them onto the stage. Peace, peace, peace.
Oh, we be on live. Peace, 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 peace.
There we go. I think that's everybody up there. Bong, bong, and bong. Awesome. Hey, it's so great to have you guys. How are we doing this evening?
I am tired, but I'm here. I'm here. I'm tired. So I had a busy weekend. So, but I'm here. I'm here. Shout out to the Youth to Youth conference. They had me out there. They've been trying to get me to go out there and do a workshop for years, and this is the first time I said, "Yo, I got y'all. I'm gonna do it for y'all this year." So I took one of my senior students there. We had an amazing time. It was just a long drive back. And then I taught two capoeira workshops. Then I had to drop. I didn't realize that he lived in a different city. So it was like, if I had known that, I just went by myself. But let me not talk trash about it because he's listening to the show right now. So I love you, Bolinos. Love you, man. But we on live. I don't want to leave any dead air. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, to all the uncles, grandfathers, to all the stepdads, to all the coaches, all the male teachers and mentors. You know who you is. And then, of course, happy Juneteenth to everybody out there. You know who you is as well. So definitely, I hope everybody had a moment to celebrate and learn from one another and interact with each other. So shout out to the founders of Liberation Park out here. I started teaching capoeira at a new park. They call it Liberation Park. I didn't know the history, but I learned the history this weekend. And I didn't realize that it was my community. I was like, hey, we need to tear down these old houses and build up a park that's safe for the babies. So I was like, I didn't even know that, Baba. So I'm really proud to be a part of that legacy. So definitely.
Sherry, shout out both of y'all for being here. So you know that today. Oh, hold on.
I'm always doing it. Don't mind me.
That's all right. Now today is very important, right? We are discussing men's mental health, how that affects one, the family dynamic, and two, overall the community. I got some questions for the guys. Y'all ready to answer?
So it's mental and physical health, right?
Mental and physical health, because we believe that they are attached.
True indeed. I'm with it.
All right, bet. So, what are some common societal stigmas surrounding men's mental health, and how can we break the silence around the issue?
Ooh. That's a big one. It's a big one. I know oftentimes we're told that mental health is like a white thing, and that we shouldn't be doing it. And I don't want to point fingers, but I know often the church community is really like anti-mental health. They're like, just pray it away. You know, Jesus will take care of it. What's the pressure? That? So I know a lot of us came up in the church, so a lot of those stigmas, a lot of our attitudes towards mental health came from that. But there was, I appreciate the fact that in the last couple of years, we're seeing more and more of us becoming more open to the idea of taking care of ourselves when it comes to our mental health. But there is still a stigma attached. Shout out to the barbershops out there. There's a lot of them that are actually doing these events where they're bringing in, mental health physicians to come into the community and work with men in there. So shout out. There's a lot of them that are doing it around the country. You just gotta tap in, but we still got a lot of work to do when it comes to that.
Ashe. What about you, Dr. Zumbi?
I'm reminded of an old Islamic saying where it says, "Trust Allah, but tie your camel." And when Dan mentioned the whole thing about religion being a factor in not pursuing mental health care, I always try to keep it within context. There was a time where the minister had to be everything in one package, where he had to be the counselor as well as the minister and as well as the representative in local political affairs. As the world became more complex, whatever his skill sets were in the past were insufficient to deal with the complexities of today's world. Okay. So in some ways, the minister, the imam, or even the rabbi may have been left behind and could not serve his constituency or his congregation the way he would have, 60, 70, 80 years ago.
Right.
Okay. So I would dare say, I would say religion has played a huge factor. I would also say from a cultural standpoint, we feel that those who may have pursued mental health, as Dan would say, it was only a white thing. But as some of our scholars, our elders, our ancestors began studying the residual effects of the Ma'afa and other traumatizing events in our sojourn in human history, we're beginning to take a second look at what, not so much about what is wrong with us, but what has happened to us as a people. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to piggyback off of something that Zumbi brought up last week.
Gotcha.
That we really can't forget the external factors. That we can do the work, internally. We can do the work with one another, but we can't forget that there are external factors that, it'll be like if I'm sick and then one of you give me a medicine to cure me, but then you put me back in that atmosphere where I got sick at. When I
Right, it's just gonna happen again.
Back to that atmosphere that got me sick. So Zumbi brought that out last week, and I kind of want to make sure that we
bring it out again. So that leads to my next question: what unique challenges and I ask you because now is the time to share with people what they may not realize are actual challenges that the brothers face, even as sisters. You know what I'm saying? I raise sons and I watch my brothers and gentlemen grow up, and I've seen the treatment, but understanding the actual challenge is something that I may not even grasp. So what unique challenges do you brothers face when seeking help for mental health issues, as well as how can we create more of a supportive environment?
I would say this. I personally don't think that there's enough African-centered male therapists on the scene. Okay. You may have Black therapists, but you've been trained in that Western psychology of Freud and Skinner. Okay. The need for having an African-centered male therapist, there's certain nuances that only males could understand. And I'm not saying that the females don't understand it, but to sit down with an African-centered male therapist, I think is a significant challenge. There's two here in my area. One that I've just reconnected with, who's originally from South Africa. The other, I guess, because for whatever reason, he's not accepting new clients or new patients. So I don't know if he's just in that big of a demand or he wants to put a cap on what his workload is. So just finding an African-centered therapist, I think, is one of the biggest challenges that the brothers face.
And I can speak from experience because there's only one in my area, and he's a close friend, so he can't
Right.
be my therapist because he's a close friend of mine. But he's one, and
Right.
same thing you were saying, Zubi. He's booked. He's like overbooked. He just cannot. He physically cannot take any more clients because he's in such high demand. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. 100%.
Is that title, do they actually have Afrocentric in their title somewhere? When people are looking for this sort of thing, they may look directly for what you say, and maybe that's not how it shows up. How does it show up when they're searching for this kind of therapist? What keywords are they looking for?
Good question, because my homie is all word of mouth. It's all word of mouth. It was like, oh, I got somebody. It's all like, he'll tell you in a minute. He'll be like, he's probably never got a call through LinkedIn, or there's a psychiatrist website where you can go look for that. And he's never gotten. It's all through word of mouth. And that's only
advertising.
I'm only speaking from experience. So yeah.
And I think another thing that would help is how active is the therapist. And what I mean by that is this. Are you able to find books by this particular therapist? Are you able to find works in the journal along with word of mouth? We mentioned our ancestors such as Dr. Bobby Wright. We mentioned psychiatrists just as Dr. Patricia Newton and Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, who actually had their own respective practices in the Baltimore, D.C. area. Okay. So I think I don't want to say it's like a needle in a haystack, but usually therapists will give you what I would call an initial trial run. And usually within that first session, you'll get an idea of whether I'll put it to you this way. You'll find out if you're getting a Dr. Naeem Akbar, a Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, or a Dr. Patricia Newton versus a Dr. Alvin Poussin. Okay. So that's what I mean by, yes, you may have a Black therapist, but is that Black therapist African-centered? So there's a huge difference there.
Did that answer your question, Fake Goddess?
Oh, most definitely. So now it's time to get really into it, right? We've created, in my opinion, a little bit of a dynamic so that the brothers can feel comfortable coming to their partner, their spouse, their community and saying, hey, I need help. But now that we've done that, in what ways, if we don't, because for me, it's about teaching the why. In what ways do men's mental health struggles affect the family dynamics? And please include communication and emotional well-being in your response.
Got you. Well, I know, again, speaking from experience, right? Right. So I've been a parent, I've been a dad for 30 years. My oldest actually turned 29 yesterday. We had the best Father's Day present I ever got. So I knew when I was a young dad, I really wasn't on it. There was a lot of things I need to cover. And I had to slowly learn that, right? But I knew at a very young age, I knew that I had to get on point with that. I knew that my well-being, whether it's mental, emotional, or physical, it all had to be aligned because my family's looking up to me to be the father, to be the husband, to be the partner, to be the uncle, to be the mentor. They needed me to do that. And my community as well. They really, really needed me to do that. So I know that it's crucial for me to be on point. And then we talked about this last week. It's also a lot of pressure, right? It's also a lot of pressure. And I think that's where the community comes in. And like I alluded to earlier, you really can't expect to be able to get the medicine and then go back into the fire, not expecting need to go back to the hospital. So I know from my experience, it was a community that really held me down, that really supported me. To this day, they continue to support me. And that's crucial to my, and a lot of them come and check up on me, make sure that I'm good. Whether they're elders or they're younger than me or the same age, they come and check on me. We're really big on doing checks on one another. Hey, are you good? Just talk to my barber today, like, hey, are you good? Because he just had a baby, so I just want to make sure you're good. We got to make a visit to drop some stuff off. So I think all of that, and what's dope is that families need to see that. They need to see that the community support them, and that's how we're supposed to be working on the community. We should all be on the community tip, supporting one another, and that's something that the baby's gonna do what we do. They're not gonna do what we say. They're gonna do what we actually physically do. And if they see us do community work, and the community coming to support us, they're gonna realize that's how we gotta work. That's how we gotta function.
That's absolutely right.
For me, I had to take a holistic approach where in Western medicine, everything is compartmentalized. Okay. So for me, everything became holistic. How does the physical affect the mental, affect the emotional, affect the spiritual? And I know I said this in a previous episode. One of the things that I had to begin to understand, and I took this from my athletic background, as I got older, the one thing I had to understand was the importance of what role does testosterone play in a man's, total health, not just physical health. Because I think I said before, testosterone will affect three things. It will affect your ability to produce lean muscle mass, your libido, as well as your mood. Okay. And one of the things, or one of the biggest enemies of testosterone production is white sugar. Because what white sugar also does, and I had to tell single moms this in a situation. If your boys start getting refined white sugar excessively, it may damage his ability to produce testosterone, which opens up the door for other problems down the road for him. Okay. So I had to learn not just, about my physical health, but how it affects my mental health, affects my emotional health, affects my spiritual health. I had to say, okay, what foods do I need to ingest? What foods do I need to put away? Okay, because, chemicals in food, it led me to make the jump from being a notorious swine eater to, by 1992, I became a vegetarian. I never looked back. So this year, I think it makes about maybe 31, 32 years of becoming a vegetarian. And when I played college football during training camp, I would go vegan for 2 weeks. Okay. So there were things that I had to teach myself about holistic health, not just physical over here, mental over here. Everything is integrated. Everything is interconnected if you deal with it from an African-centered perspective.
I'm glad you brought that up, Zumbi. And I think it's great that we connected to this previous episode's podcast, because I think it's a good idea that we're consistently building off of that, right? But I'm glad you brought that, because I just turned 50, and one of my March I turned 50, right? One of my biggest worries, and I'm going to connect the physical to the mental and all of that, right? One of my biggest worries was not being able to move as fast as I did, and also my sexual problems. Like, I was really worried about all those things. Like, I really was. And I remember I always get my annual checkup during my birthday. Right before my birthday, I get my annual checkup. And I remember going in, and my blood pressure was high. You know what I'm saying? And the doctors were like, yo, your blood pressure is never high. Your blood pressure is always on point. And then, they took it again. It was lower, but it was still high. It was lower, and it was still high. And I remember my doctor saying, are you okay? Because I could tell that you're anxious. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're really, and I was, because I was Pastor News from De La Soul had just passed away. So I had all that on my mind, right? I was really thinking about that, and I was really, really worried. So my doctor said, to be on the safe side, we're going to run all these other tests. So I was shook. I was super, super shook. But all my tests came out great. They were like, even my doctor was like, yo, you was really tripping. Like, they should like, you was really tripping. Because, But all of those things that came up, people telling me when you get to this particular age, you're not going to be able to do X, Y, Z. And so those are things that I worried about before I turned 50. And those are things that I put into our heads, right? Those are things that I put into our heads. This idea that we have to consistently be operating at an optimum level that we did when we was 25,
right.
which is impossible, right? These are things that I put into our mental, and it affected my physical. So definitely glad you brought that up, Minister Zumbi.
Yeah. And so when, I don't know if when you did your blood work, did you ask for not only for your blood sugar number, but your T level number?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Hold on. Time out. Wait. Remember, not everybody's where y'all at. Bring it back. Remember, we're having a conversation with each other for those people out there. Please tell us what that means. The blood sugar, I think most people can break that down, but the other question.
Testosterone level. And I'm glad you brought that up, Zumbi, because I just rehabbed my right arm. I was losing grip strength in my right arm. And that was my biggest worry. That was like oh my God, I thought my testosterone levels were going down. So got that checked as well. And they gave me, I was able to rehab it by now. It's always good now.
Right.
So, but yes, I did ask for that. I was worried. But again, going back to what I was saying, the mental affecting the physical.
Right.
So, brothers, with that, what I heard you guys say a lot of is this check, right? As women, we're often told mammograms, breast cancer, yada, yada, yada. And then also because if your family member had it, you should be checking these things. Real quick, tell the brothers what kinds of things they should be looking out. Because you said you're half a century old, brother. Congratulations.
You sound real old now. Half a century.
You know what I'm saying? Like you got to say it a different way so it sounds cool.
So you good.
You know what I mean?
I mess with you. You have to get your prostate checked, right? High blood pressure, hypertension, T levels. What else they gave me? Sugar level, of course. And there's two other tests that I need to pull out my bill. I already said prostate.
Come on, wifey.
If you're over the age of 45, a colonoscopy.
Okay. And then there's one. And then there's one other test that is not commonly mentioned, but usually your cardiologist would recommend this. It's called a calcium score test.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't get that this time. Yeah.
Okay. So what a calcium score test is this. It's almost like doing an EKG if for your heart. Calcium score test is looking for any possible indicators that could potentially lead to, let's say, any type of cardiac or cardiovascular issues. Okay. So the score is between 0 and I want to say 400. So the closer you are to 0, the better off you are. I had mine done and I got the results back within 48 hours and it came back 0. Okay. So what that means is that there are no indicators of any potential cardiovascular or cardiac arrest problems in the future, as far as I know. Now, what I have been doing is supplementing with a basic multivitamin, flaxseed oil gel cap, and cinnamon. So that's pretty much, what my supplement regimen is.
Why cinnamon? Because there's a lady that I follow on Instagram and her whole thing is don't forget the cinnamon. So I know, but why is it good, especially for men, to supplement with cinnamon? What does it do for you?
It controls blood sugar. So it's like when you start eating, there isn't this spike that takes place in your blood sugar. It kind of slows down the absorption. That's pretty much what cinnamon does. That's why you'll if you see people who constantly eat oatmeal, they'll put dashes of cinnamon in the oatmeal. Okay, as part of that regimen.
I personally like the taste of cinnamon in my oatmeal. You know what I'm saying? Nutmeg, a little bit of clove, sometimes some allspice and brown sugar, blueberries. It's delicious.
But you don't see that in this country. You see it in a lot of Mediterranean countries.
Come
They
on with it,
use
mama.
cinnamon, nutmeg, bitter spices, because bitter spices, or anything bitter for that matter, it could be lemon peel, fights inflammation just naturally.
Hmm. I love it. All right. So with all those things, right, that we're looking out for, here's a big question. Typically, especially in our community, Black men, because you're so strong, right? And I've had this happen with several gentlemen in my family to where I had to be like, bruh, I need you to handle that because I love you. And you're killing yourself on the inside, right? How do these untreated mental conditions, and even if it is hypertension, because it starts, like you said, you were anxious in your mind, and that thought raised your blood pressure. So how do those untreated mental conditions, how do they affect the relationships that you gentlemen have between your spouse, your children, your family, and then of course overall quality of life?
I think you can see it in our young boys and men very early. Like you can see it, like I said, I teach middle school, and I see it very early. This, because a lot of us are not really taught to really like talk about our issues, right? We just really we really don't. So a lot of it, I see it. The new phrase now is behavior is communication. That's a new phrase that everybody's using in education now. Behavior is education. So when our students are acting out, they're trying to tell us something, right? So I see it in 13-year-olds very young. You know what I mean? So and then a lot of it is, since it's untreated, like you was pointing out, as you get older, those behaviors become more severe, right? Especially when you have access to alcohol and illicit drugs. So a lot of our young men, they self medicate, and they're very, when you listen to hip hop music, they're very clear about what they're doing with the drugs and alcohol, that they're self medicating. So they're very, very clear about it. You can hear, they're actually telling us what they're doing with this. So it starts young, and it just mushrooms as they get older.
And I think also, and I'm going to go back to testosterone again. When young males are really driven by testosterone, which I believe plays a critical factor in why you see our young males so active, and you don't have an apparatus that deals with their particular learning style. Okay, so with young males, you have to be hands on. Since you have an educational system that doesn't know how to deal with active young males, this is where you introduce Ritalin, you introduce other medications. So it's almost like institutions are turning our young males into junkies at a very early age. Okay. And so from there, you go from Ritalin to what's next? Is it hashish? Is it coke? Is it heroin? Is it crack? Is it ecstasy?
Hmm.
Okay. So it's like we've been introduced to drugs at a very early age because your school system doesn't have the apparatus to deal with the learning style of our young men, which is primarily being hands on. Okay.
Correct.
Because we have a different type of intelligence. I think there's a professor at Arizona State that said that there are 7 types of intelligences, and the present school system in America only has one. Okay. So if we can't deal with you with that one intelligence, now you're labeled special ed, you're labeled this, that, and the third. It's like Albert Einstein had a saying where he said, if you try to make a fish climb a tree and then call him stupid, no. Okay. He's just in the wrong environment, or the environment is not conducive to what that fish's intelligence truly is. Okay. So I think we have to look at institutions and ask ourselves, are we using the proper apparatus to educate our young males, because they have a different learning style? It's not that they can't learn, it's just they need a different vehicle.
True indeed. And I looked it up real quick. The 7 different kinds of intelligence. They say word smart or linguistic intelligence, math smart or numerical reasoning logic intelligence, physically smart, which is where a lot of us get our prowess, right? The ability to be kinesthetic intelligence, movement, right? Music smart, which is musical intelligence, people smart, which is interpersonal intelligence, and then self smart, which is intra, which is INTRA, personal, meaning inside myself. I'm intelligent about who I am. And the Fit Goddess Tribe, we're always trying to help everybody increase all levels of intelligence. Now, you gentlemen said some really, really, really what could be scary facts, right? If we continue on this path of overlooking and minimalizing the emotional intelligence of our men, as well as their sexual maturity and just overall health and well-being. What steps? Now, as a mother, I can say that the physical activity. I like to get my sons outside before school. I get them to burst their energy before they have to sit down and focus. That way they have a little bit more focus. But what would you say are some steps that can be taken to address this impact, to start from a younger generation to where they are learning that this is what we do because this is how we take care of ourselves?
I know and there's actually studies about this. There's studies about how you know, boys and their fathers and uncles, like the way they show affection is through horseplay, right? Wrestling and that's and again that comes from experience as a dad of 3 boys and my daughter too. They like horse playing. To this day we like playing around with my young male students. We play around, we slap box. I teach them deep south. Like there's they like that because that's where they show affection. They really show that affection from there. So as a parent speaking to other parents, if you're a dad and you have boys, then that's actually healthy, to a certain degree. But it's actually healthy because that's how the touching, that's how we show affection when it comes to horseplay. So I don't have an issue with that. I actually recommend that. And I know a lot of times we focus more on like video games and stuff like that. But you're right. Fit God is going outside, playing games, playing. So when I took my babies out to the park, I would actually play with them in the park. I would go into the jungle gym and play with them. I would go to their I used to be real tired too. I used to go to their recess time and I would teach all the kids how to play manhunt and kick the can. And we would all go out there and play. Yeah, we would have a blast. We would be there are adults to this day that walk up to me in the street and be like, "Hey, I remember you." And I'm like, "I don't remember you." And they be like, "I remember you used to play manhunt with us back in the day." And and children love that. They really love that. They really want to interact and play and have fun, with their father figures. And I think that's one thing that we should do. And I also want to my children and my students, there's a time for play and there's a time for work. Right?
That's right.
We'll play now or we'll work now and then we'll play at this time. We got to get the work done or vice versa. So I think that interaction with them, even just playing games, even doing pickup ball. I have a homie who's a mentor and he plays pickup ball with his mentees. He goes to the school and plays basketball with them. And they're not playing a hard game, they're just talking, right? Just sitting there talking. So I think those simple things, finding out what your kids like and then doing those things. But I do believe for God, it's like going outside, hiking, playing in the jungle gym, riding bikes. Oh, I miss those days. Oh, riding bikes all the time. Those things, they remember those things, man. And those things, that's where they learn how to really be active in a healthy way, in an environment, a loving environment. And I think that is growth and development.
And let me put this point in here before I forget, because you brought the point. You brought the most critical piece of the conversation. So if your impact as a man affects your mental and physical health, affects families and communities, what you just described in terms of spending time with the children, doing children things, in regards to how you function with the youth. Now, the family time and intimate time with the wife and at home is that's another piece. But when you're interacting with children and they see you as an adult interacting with them and having fun versus telling them, pointing the fingers, move, you can show up to the football games and the baseball games, but when they see you active, physically active, playing 1, 2, 3 red light with all the stuff we used to play, jump rope, double dutch, and Mother May I, we bringing back all the old school games. It changes two things about the way they see you as a parent. Number one, they see themselves in the future. If he or
Mm-hmm.
she is that active right now, when they're 3 and 4 times my age or twice my age, then I can see, the things that I need to do to take care of myself to ensure that I'm able to play with my children like that. That's
That's
the
right.
first. And the second thing is if you care enough about your body to stay physically healthy and so you can play with me, then I must be of some value to your life.
Mm-hmm.
Very critical pieces in just what you said.
I would start with, I was watching a piece of our elder Ashwa Kwesi and his first lady Marira Kwesi, and he talked about African Mondo arts, or what's commonly called martial arts. Okay, because I think our young males need that, particularly coming from an African-centered perspective. Um, I would dare say Fruit of Islam training, which I think is probably one of the most effective forms of manhood development that still exists amongst us.
Mm-hmm.
Because the one thing that I think is missing in the development of young African males is um, there has to be a program of self mastery. Okay, and the reason that has to be is because of what will be expected of young males once they come on the other side of their manhood training ritual. Okay, and that requires a level of self mastery, self knowledge, and self discovery. And I know this is another self that I would normally write, but there has to be self mastery uh, developments. I also recommend board games such as chess, such
Yeah.
as Monopoly, such as Risk, um, especially strategic board games.
Stratego is good too.
Okay, because our young men must engage in more critical thinking activities
Mm-hmm.
to where you're not acting on impulse. Because when we start putting you in situations where now you become responsible for the maintenance of a woman and the maintenance of children, in the Quran, it's taught that there will come a time where a man may be responsible for the welfare of 50 women. Now, that doesn't mean he's taking on 50 wives, but if you ever have a wartime situation, a man may have to be responsible not just for his wife, but daughters, nieces,
Cousins.
mothers, etc. Okay, so there has to be a comprehensive form of self mastery training for the males because of the future demands that will be placed on him to be producer, provider, and protector of the village.
Mm.
Yes.
I love it.
Well,
So
100%. And I'm glad you brought up the martial arts components because I believe that martial arts is the closest thing that we have to a rites of passage out here right now. If we don't have a rites of passage program, then a martial arts program would definitely help your young boys learn how to become men. There's actually goals they have to set. There has to be, that self mastery component for them to get to a particular point.
right.
And there's also studies that show that that's helped them with their grades, it helps them with self respect, how they treat other people, how they interact with people, members of their community, whether they're hostile or not. So all those things play a part in that. So yes, get your babies into martial arts. I'm a big proponent of that. Capoeira evangelist over here. So yeah, I think that's crucial.
Agreed. Agreed. So, okay, we've discussed if we don't do something about it, what could happen. We've discussed a few things that we can do to kind of, and I love that they're all playful. I love that they're legit all like video games because I do this a lot with my children, my sons, when I watch them. They got Legos for their birthday. The oldest one is now 11, so his fine motor skills, he's able to put them together and not get frustrated. The 7-year-old, however, is not yet there. He's got the concept. He likes to put things together and he can build his own creation, but he still cannot follow the instructions and put the little pieces together to make an overall thing. Very interesting in watching them. However, I use this, like you're saying, as a way for them to communicate. Yes, you're going to realize that the older one is going to do all the work, but now, little one, how do you appear through communication, you know what I'm saying, as still part of the team? Do you turn the page? Do you hand them the brick? Like, how do you make this a cooperative effort to where now we're still having fun and nobody's being the boss over one person? I love that you gentlemen say a lot of the things that we as women feel that we're doing, but there's just a different sauce that you guys have. So now that brings us to the greater whole, right? We talked about our interpersonal with ourselves, with our spouse, with our unit, our family. But what happens if we don't take care of this problem, this individual problem? What effect is it going to have on the community?
Well, here's what will happen. If the young male is not trained to be a producer, provider, and protector of the village, he becomes a predator on the village. And we've had generations of predators that have come through our community and have participated as merchants of death. Okay, whether it's selling illegal weapons, whether it's participating in the pharmaceutical trade. Okay, because there's somewhere along the way there's been arrested development. Okay, this is where you get into the whole issue of domestic violence. Okay, and that's what I mean by if you don't have these things in place, now you become you produce predators by default. Okay, and now the very males that are products of our loins now have become, for lack of a better term, menace to society.
And I'm going to take it a step further. A lot of times those predators are worshipped. You know, they're seen as what masculinity needs to be, and that's the scary part, right? That's the real scary part.
Yeah.
So how can the community address these concerns, right? We talk nutrition, right? And I sat on the panel of a libertarian party and told them the same thing. The problem with our people is the fact that you feed us trash, like across the board, but because we have a certain breed of trauma that is unique to us, it makes it even worse. So what can the community do on a large scale? Like, I came from Juneteenth today. If I was to speak on a podium and say 3 things that they could start doing right now, what can we tell the community to do to help save us?
Ooh, good question. The first thing we need to do is assess our talents and abilities, right? Because I know a lot of times we think that like we have to go outside our community to do certain things, or we have to go outside our community to look for those people. But before we can do that, before we can assess our abilities and our talents, is we really got to get to know who we are, right? So I'm glad you brought up Juneteenth. So again, Liberation Park's right down the street in my new neighborhood. I get up in the morning, you know, I walk into the park, I run into my neighbor. I come out the bushes, he comes out, we run into each other. He has an AR-15, right? Yeah, he has an AR-15, right? Boom, I'm like, boom. So, you know, I'm like, hey, good morning. He just gives me this look like, oh, wow. Like, okay, so I just keep it moving. When I get to the park, who shows up later? My neighbor shows up later, you know. So I said, I'm gonna wait. So the first thing I do is I walk up to him, I introduce myself. Hey, you know, I'm your neighbor. Da, 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 da. We start talking, and you know, we hit it off. awesome. Get to know him. And he didn't know I lived there. I didn't know he lived there. He's a member of the new Black Panther Party. I'm like, wow, lives right next door to me. So it's like we have to get to know who we are before we can figure out. We started talking about martial arts, started talking about knife fighting, started talking about nutrition, and we got, oh, I didn't know you could do that. I know you could do that. We got to start getting to know one another first before we can assess what our talents are, right? And then that's the number one thing: get to know one another. And then number two, assess our talents, right? And number three, show up, right? We got to show up. We got to show up and support one another. Not just monetarily, right? But be there, help one another out, and go from there. So those are the first three things I would say. I know they're very simple. They don't take much effort.
No, that's what we need. We need them to be simple, because if we make them convoluted, we're going to feel like as a people, I can't get that done.
So, yeah.
But it's very simple to, like you said, learn myself, learn my neighbor, support my neighbor. What about you, Minister Zumbi?
I think one of the first things that has to be done is find out what organizations already exist and what are these organizations doing. Okay. Because what I find in the past is that we all try to do the same thing. And this is where the assessment of talents come in. So all of us don't do the same thing. Okay. So if there's an organization that's working on A, okay, is there a void that you can fill in for B, C, D, and E? Okay. Not everybody has to be in NAACP, UNIA, Nation of Islam, Moore Science Temple, etc. Okay. We need people in local Black chambers of commerce. All right. We need Black folks engaged in food sovereignty. Okay. So find out where you can get in and fit in, because we need leadership across the board, instead of this herd mentality where everybody moves into particular niches. Okay. So it's like, find out what organizations already exist, and if you can lend your skill sets to that particular organization, go to that organization. If there's no organization dealing with what you want to address, then you create that organization.
That's right.
That's right. I love it. So now we've got the ball rolling, right? We're addressing the individual. We're addressing the individual's role in the community and how that can change by one, taking care of ourselves, and then looking out for the man next to us. But with the babies, for me, it's always about teaching preventative care. So, healthy lifestyle choices, seeking medical assistance. Can you tell the brothers out there why preventative care is so important?
And I'll speak from a sports perspective. Okay. If you take care of yourself in your youth, your body will take care of you as you age. Okay. In other words, don't allow your youth to let you be reckless with your body. Okay. Treat it as the temple it was meant to be.
That's right.
Okay. And not allow it to be a two-legged bordello.
Ooh.
Okay.
Bars.
Because
right.
Because I've seen situations where, and I know guys right now that I played ball with who, because of the punishment that they've taken, that they can't even brush their teeth because they're in that much pain. Okay, because of they didn't take care of themselves, they allowed themselves to get shot up with cortisone. Hennessy became their choice of self-medication, or having a joint the night before a game, and now all of those cumulative things now begin to show up in their 40s and in their 50s because they didn't take care of themselves in their late teens going into their early to mid 20s. Okay.
Amen. No, you're right, and it does. It starts early. The good, because it's easier to maintain good habits over the decades than to try to break old habits that you've been doing for years.
Y'all know that Frederick Douglass quote, right?
It's easier to raise what is it? Healthy boys than to repair broken men.
Broken man, yeah.
Mhm.
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah.
I live by that.
So yep. So it's easier to just have these great habits that you just cultivate, than to when you're 50, you're like, oh, I got to stop doing X, Y, Z, and it's very hard to do that.
Right. And again, to those out there listening, understand that doesn't mean if you are just turning 50, you know what I'm saying, like Dan up there, that doesn't mean that you don't start. That just means you start now and then you don't stop.
Right. Sorry.
So, okay. Go ahead, Mama.
No, I was just going to say, but the man is basically the foundation for the family. So the health of the man will dictate and determine the health of the family. And the health of the families dictate the health of the communities.
Correct.
So if you have a healthy lifestyle and you see other people are not, then you want to kind of share, hey, this is what we do and this is why we can do this at this age. Maybe you should try it. You know, it's never too late. And happy to say to the brother, happy belated birthday, but in some cultures you would be still considered a young boy.
Oh yeah, okay. I hope so, hopefully.
You know. And so you know, age is a quality of life that you live. How you age is based upon the quality of your decisions that you made to how to take care of your temple. And you all have addressed it. And I thank you for the brother minister in the beginning stating how important it is to find a compatible person to deal with. If it's on a personal level, it could be a good friend that you get to talk to. And on the professional level, you definitely have to make sure that your physician or whoever is capable of understanding who you are and how you roll. Because like you said, if they don't know my story, there's nothing you can do to help fix me once I'm broken.
That's right.
Now
we have go ahead, brother.
There's another thing that we have to do is that we have to rid ourselves and cure ourselves of what I call the John Henry disorder. Okay, because we have not learned how to leverage. Okay, no form of civilization was built solo. Okay, everything in nature uses leverage, which means everything is done as a collective. And so we've been perverted and adulterated by this John Henry disorder, where we think that we can, you know, with being solo, we can just take on the world and conquer the world without an army behind us. Okay. Whereas men of other cultures, other ethnicities have built their civilizations as collectives.
Correct.
Okay, so we have to begin to understand, how do we use leverage in every aspect of our life?
I love it. Now I gotta jump back to the comments, right? We had Daniel Banks say something super dope. Exactly why the community should be teaching our youth and not the public school systems. And then Brandon West had a question for you gentlemen. Does R. Kelly fall into this category?
Can he expand on that?
He put that in the chat when we were talking about predators in our community and how we talked about how we glorify some of those predators. And I think that's what the reference was to that. That's because he put that in the chat during that time. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I would definitely say he falls into that category.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Yep. I agree 100%.
Now, with that, right, what strategies can be employed to promote mental health awareness? Because again, we're saying that from generation and generation, from about, Dan, maybe your generation up and probably into what the early 20s, there is this stigma behind seeking mental health help. Even as a lady that's out here dating, there are so many men that come to me looking for comfort when what they need is a therapist, and they won't hear me when I say, please go seek help. You know, we can still do this, but you need to go do that. How do we break those stigmas and create a space where men can be okay, um, being encouraged to seek mental health?
I want to piggyback over something that Zumbi said. He said that we have to do it collectively, right? So earlier on, I mentioned how like some barbershops are bringing in mental health physicians to come and speak to young men about that. And it makes it, again, that's what they're creating, those safe spaces like you mentioned. So as men, it is, especially my age, it is our responsibility, it is our duty to create those safe spaces for the younger brothers, right? So, so whether you are a teacher, whether you are a martial arts instructor, whether you are a coach, you have that space. Now it is your duty to create that space to say, hey, and I'm gonna say this, going back to what I was saying earlier about the medication. If I'm sick and I come to you and you give me the medication, I still got to go back outside to where I caught that sickness, right? So we have to create those spaces so when the brothers do go see that mental health physician, when they come back, we have a space for them to continue to heal. It has to be holistic, like Zumbi was saying. So we have to create those circles wherever we at, where our men can feel safe being able to talk about it. And when they feel safe about it, trust me, they will do it.
A shame.
And then also you have to and you talked about the mate selection process. One of the things that really has to be done is, if a man wants to present himself as a candidate, then he has to demonstrate that he is not willing, but he's actually participating in his recovering and his healing process. Okay, he can't come into a mate selection situation as damaged goods.
Yes.
Okay, so there's some house cleaning that has to take place, because you can't present yourself as a suitable candidate when you're emotionally broken, politically broken, economically broken, culturally broken, etc. Okay, and I'm pretty sure this also goes for the women as well. I think a lot of times men have made the mistake because of what they didn't get from their mothers. Now you're looking for mama's love in inappropriate places. Okay. And I can say this because I saw that dynamic play out in my own family, and it caused a lot of damage, where you've had multiple children produced with multiple partners. Okay, because of that brokenness that only a mother's love could have brought. And when that mother rejected him, now he's out into the world, basically thrown to the wolves, and not having that nurturing aspect of his development. And he just wreaks havoc everywhere he goes. Okay, so part of that healing process has to take place before you present yourself in the mate selection process. I don't say dating anymore. It's a mate selection process. You know, I look at dating as more like sampling.
Zumbi with the bars, right?
Okay.
Raise them high.
Right. Yeah. Well, listen, we're always about reframing the words, because these words are very important. And if you stop calling it dating, right, you would change your mind maybe about who you're selecting if you called it a selection process as opposed to the dating pool.
That's one of the things Honorable Elijah Muhammad said. Those three sciences, that third science is the science of mate selection and genetic engineering. Okay, so if we're talking about building civilization, you don't really build civilization through dating. You really build civilization through marriage. And regardless of what you hear, when you begin to approach marriage from an African-centered perspective, I've always said that marriage is the ultimate personal development journey. Okay, because there's lessons in marriage, particularly for men, when you talk about being accountable for someone, being responsible for someone, having to be selfless, because selfish men don't survive the marriage experience. Okay, so there's lessons in marriage that you can't get anywhere else. Okay, and we're not talking about, you know, getting some license from City Hall. From a cultural standpoint, if you don't deal with the science of marriage, how can you talk about building family and then ultimately community? So there's a direct correlation from marriage to family to community, nation, and, you know, any other form of civilization you want to discuss. And so when you hear our young people basically say, I'm not getting married, and this is the problem with us as a community. Why is it that we tolerate making babies with each other without making commitments to one another first? Okay. So I think we need to get that pathology corrected.
And I agree with that. And I'll say this too, on top of what you said, Dr. Zumbi, is that it's a critical piece to understand that the mental issues don't resolve after the wedding.
Check.
Right.
The marriage takes place long before there is a wedding planner. And the compatibility piece that the parents have been pushed back because we're eloping now because we don't want to hear you say no to this guy or to this girl. We're going to go ahead and do our own thing. And you miss the benefit of having the family input into your selection, your mate selection, as you call it, of a spouse. And therefore, you invite mental illness, physical health conditions into the marriage because the process of selecting is this short, but the wedding planning is this long. So I agree that we have, you know, the brothers have a hard battle, and so do the sisters. But this is a result of a lack of cultural understanding as to how families function and communities are supposed to function. This is a dysfunction that we're perpetuating based upon somebody else's lack of culture and their principles that they created, their institutions that they created, but they were created incorrectly. They were created backwards. And we're trying to find a way to fit in, and it doesn't work. Men don't survive as long as women do. This is what the statistics show, because men they don't build relationships like women do. Women are social creatures, but if a man doesn't have a person that he can trust and he can call on, he can count on, and he can, you know, look, it's real bad. You know, you got my back. Yes, brother, I'm here. If they don't have those friendships established and maintained throughout their life, it can really affect their mental and physical health. Period.
Sheesh. All right, gentlemen. So to wrap up the show, you know, I always like to give knowledge. Let's give the people 3 books, or 2 if you can only get 2, but you know, 3 is the magic number for me, that can help in terms of men's mental health, social health, sexual and emotional maturity, to be able to feel okay to seek and acquire or encourage or support other men looking for, going through any kind of things dealing with their mental or physical health.
I'm going to recommend, we just finished a book club on this, The 5 Principles by Stickman of Dead Prez. Oh my God, it's a good book. He talks about, what I like about it, he talks about his journey to health and wellness, right? And some of the things he learned, some of the things that he took with him, some things that he discarded. And I think it's crucial because anybody can relate, especially from the hood, you can relate to it. And it's a real easy read. So I highly recommend this one. I'm gonna do it again as a book club, hopefully by the winter. So
What about you, Boom?
I would say this. Dr. Bobby E. writes The Psychopathic Racial Personality, number one.
oof.
I would also recommend Dr. Lalita Africa's African Holistic Health.
Wow.
Okay. And there's another book that Stickman wrote. I can't think of the title. I think he talks about, he has this program. It's called RBG Fit.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't think, I think it's called Fit to something. Okay.
He wrote a book on weightlifting. And
okay, I think that's the one where he talks about
vegetarianism. Yeah.
Yeah, basically he talks about, being plant-based and his strength training.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not fit to heal though.
And I would also look into and this is just a personal thing. Anything written by 8-time Mr. Olympia Lee Haney.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he actually has created his own nutrition system and his own personal training certification program. Okay, because he's always been at the forefront of understanding how the human body works. He's probably one of the few bodybuilders who basically still has all of his natural joints because he didn't kill himself during his training days. And he always had a saying about working the body. He says, stimulate, not annihilate. Okay. And he's in his 60s now, and he looks just as fit as he was during his competitive days. So I can't think of the name of the book, but anything written by Lee Haney, I would definitely recommend.
I got one more.
Come on, give it to us.
Reading it for the summer, The Will to Change, Men, Masculinity, and Love by Dr. Bell Hooks. Highly recommend it. I recommend if you do it in a book club because it's really written in that way for a bunch of men to get together and talk about love. Really, because she's asking men, we want you to come in love, and I think that's crucial. I think it's really dope and really good to do it as a collective.
Hey, brother minister, while you were on the subject, you mentioned the book by Dr. Africa. But you talked about in the beginning about the role of sugar and bleach products.
Right.
He wrote another book called Nutricide. It just basically
it's smaller,
shreds.
Yeah, get straight to the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's probably one of the few that makes a connection between food and culture.
Yeah.
Okay. So he definitely makes, and one of the things that I do like, if you go watch African Holistic Health, one of the exercises that Dr. Africa recommends is jump roping, because he says it's one of the few exercises where you are working the body as a single unit. It's not like you're working a body part here and a body part there. Everything is in unison for jump roping. I forgot what page
I do it every morning. Yep.
Or rebounding.
Every morning.
Yeah, but say or the rebounder, because if you're not coordinated, the rebounder does the same thing.
Every morning. Yep. That's how I warm up.
I love it. Yo, I had a trainer, same thing. He used to make me jump on the rebounder like for 5 to 10 minutes or 15, depending on how physically fit he was. I used to be like, what the hell is this doing? He'd be like, just watch all your muscles like this every time you hit that. I was like, oh, okay.
Yep.
Super dope.
Yep, easy on the knees too. But
that's right. All right. So ladies first, Mama, I'm going to drop the gentleman out. As I bring you to the forefront, I'm going to allow you to tell us who you are, where we can find you, and what you got going on. Gentlemen, I'm going to throw y'all backstage. And go ahead and handle that, Mama.
All right. So I am Rosalind, your life coach, CEO and owner of my company called Alchemic Aura, where we help you to see the mind, body, spirit connection and heal all three holistically, naturally, using our own science, cutting edge science technology, as well as traditional therapies and remedies. So we are in Suffolk, Virginia. Right now, we're out of the Just for the Health of It Wellness Center at 431 North Main Street, beside the post office. Beside the post office here in Suffolk, Virginia. Um, you can also find me on heal.me as a practitioner. I do aromatherapy, reflexology, personal fitness, health and wellness, strength training, and a few other things. But we're definitely life coaches, wellness coaches, and we can help with the physical and mental effects that are being exacerbated, and it's playing a role in the physical health of families and communities. So if you are in need, look for me, www.alchemicaura.com or heal.me. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll see you next week.
That's right. So
God, just come take it away.
here we go. Up next, we got Danny. Go ahead, tell us who you are.
You could Google me, Dan Trezomi. Where my killer tape at is the podcast. And definitely, if you want to train capoeira with me, let me know. I'll definitely come to your community and do a workshop. Let's do it.
Ashe, Ashe. And last but not least, Brother Zumbi, tell us where we can find you.
You can actually find my book, Gospel of Afronomics Theology, on Amazon or from your melanated bookstore. You can join the Facebook group, Gospel of Afronomics Theology, where we upload content that helps with the economic liberation of the African world community. I'm working on the expanded edition now, and I'm working on simultaneously a manuscript for my next book, which is called the Chicago Code, which is kind of an African-centered, for lack of a better term, Bushido for young men to follow, because I think we need a set of ideals to which we need to aspire.
Ashe, Ashe. I love it. I love it. Thank you for joining us today. Hey guys, I just want to tell you all again, happy Father's Day to those phenomenal fathers out there. We are grateful for your presence as we explore this profound impact on men's mental health and physical health as it relates to not only their families, but our communities. Your engagement in this discussion and the highlights the power of men being necessary contributors to the well-being of their loved ones. Remember, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and stay connected and be notified of upcoming events. We value your support and look forward to having you as part of our community. Hey, in addition, we invite you to join our Fit 100 virtual fitness training program. Click the link in our bio and use code Juneteenth today and today only to get 50% off. Together, we can harness the power within each of us to create a positive change. And remember, join us again next Monday as we continue our journey exploring new topics that intersect of physical fitness and mental health. Thank you again for joining us today. And on this day, we extend our heartfelt wishes for a fulfilling and joyful week ahead. Remember, get fit to heal and tune in again soon.